Last night I received an email from a company whose app I downloaded some time ago. The app was basically set up to help me to organise my notes, and in all honesty, I hadn't actually used it. But I got an email from them last night, and this particular email was interesting because it was from the founder and CEO who was emailing customers to let them know that unfortunately the company wasn't viable any longer. They'd run out of money and they didn't have enough premium subscribers to make it work, to make it continue, to make it a viable going concern. And so this email was basically a farewell, just to let everybody know where they were and what was happening. And as I read this email, it was interesting because it took me back to a place where I had to write a similar email when I was in the process of winding up my own startup some years ago. And it got me into reflecting about just what exactly you get from a failed startup. You know, what is it that you come away with? You know, you generally don't get paid. You go through a period of significant discomfort, and what is it that you get as a result of all that effort, which can seem like it's come to nothing? And there are really two things. I think the first thing is the people that you've met, the contacts that you've made, the relationships that you've built. And I do believe that even in a situation where you have to wind up a business, you can keep those things intact. You can still maintain relationships of trust even when things don't work out with a business. The second thing is one of those things that might sound a little bit cheesy, a little bit twee, but I think it's absolutely critical. And that is the learning that you get from having done that experience. That sort of learning only comes from having done the startup, having stepped into the arena and had the fight. And even if you lose the fight, if you want to call it that, if you want to use that analogy, you've got that experience. You don't learn that in a classroom. You don't learn that from doing an MBA or studying a syllabus or writing an essay or doing a hypothetical project where nothing's on the line. You learn that when everything's on the line. For me, I'd only been married for about 6 months at the point at which my startup failed and we had to wind it up. And I had about £500 in the bank. And I didn't go to mummy and daddy. I didn't go to my wife's parents or anyone else. I had to hustle and scrap and make ends meet. And I did that. And I'm proud of that. And that's one of the things that I talk about when I talk about my startup and how I transitioned from failure to then moving back on and adjusting my journey, as it were. But this is one of the main outputs. One of the main outputs is that learning that you get from the difficulty, from the adversity, from the failure. And it's absolutely critical, but it puts you in a vulnerable position. And I think if you are doing a startup, you are inherently in a vulnerable position because you're generally trying to do something different. You know, one of the main sources of competitive advantage is differentiation. Unless you're just trying to do something that's really disruptive in terms of cost, leadership, or price, then really you're looking at other forms of differentiation, which involves putting you out there. It involves leaving a comfort zone, and it makes you vulnerable. But vulnerability does two things in relation to other people. First of all, it shows you who your people are. You know, who's with you for the journey, who are your supporters, who is helping you along the way, who can you learn from, who can learn from you, who is happy to exchange ideas with you. The second thing is it tells you who your detractors are as well. And that's interesting, that's valuable for a couple of reasons. First of all, it tells you who to be wary of, who maybe not to trust. It might be people even within your own family, it might be people who you work with. And these people could fit into any group, call it good guys, bad guys, whatever. But being vulnerable enables you to get that information. The other thing as well about that, in terms of the negative side of things, is when you are getting detractors coming to you or saying things to you that are passive aggressive or they're criticising you, learn from that. Take that information and learn from it. And even if you feel like biting back or giving a rise to it or whatever, and even if you do that, still take it away with you and just figure out, is this somebody who's just too scared to do something for themselves and so they're being bitter and, basically cheering how the mighty have fallen? Or is it somebody who has got a point? Is there some truth in there? Is this a way of building greater self-awareness so that for the next stage of your journey, you can take that experience and you can really make it work. So don't just throw it all in the bin because it's negative. Take it, analyze it, you know, be honest with yourself as well. Is there any truth in that? Use it for what it's worth. I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position by doing this video right now and sticking it on the internet. A few people who I trust and respect have told me for a little while now that I should be doing some of these videos as well as my written blogs, and that I have things that are useful for other people. And so this is it. But again, you know, this is part of my personal continuous improvement, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. Thanks.